Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf with your hosts, Denise Russo and Samantha Powell.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is a life and leadership podcast where we are exploring the lessons that we're living out loud from the books that are on our shelves. My name is Denise Russo. I'm here with my co-host Sam Powell, and we are in the midst of an amazing, incredible, life-changing, transforming book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you have not listened to the episodes before this one, it's okay. You can jump in right now because these are about tiny changes that'll have remarkable results regardless if you've read the whole book, or maybe you haven't even read the book, but you're just listening to the episodes. There's a bunch of episodes that have come out before this one. In fact, I think there's probably 14 episodes that have already come out before this episode. Thanks for being here. If you're enjoying these episodes, we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast, share it with others, and even share your feedback. What are some takeaways and things that you are learning from these lessons that you're applying to your own life? Today, as we get started with chapter 15, which is towards the end of the book, we're getting there. This is about the cardinal rule of behavior change, and it's the beginning of the fourth law of the book. This is the law about making it satisfying. So, Sam, I'd love if we could just maybe go back a page before we get started here and bring our listeners up to speed about what brings us to the fourth law of making it satisfying.
Sure. So remember, habits are formed through cue, craving, response, and reward. And so what James has put together is that in order to really hack habits, essentially, is the first law is make it obvious. That goes along with the cue, make the cue obvious. The second law is make it attractive, which goes along with the response, right? The craving, right? So it's cue, craving. So the craving needs to be really attractive, something that I really want to be doing. The third law is make it easy, which goes with the response, right? The action that you take to go along with it. So making that action that you want really, really easy, and the actions that you don't want really, really hard. So now we're in the fourth law, which is the reward, right? So cue, craving, response, reward. So reward in the fourth law is make it satisfying. That reward should be something that feels really, really great. And so this chapter here is talking about the cardinal rule of behavior change. So this is getting us into how do you make it satisfying so that this is something that you want to do again and again and again. And it's an interesting chapter. There are this one's really, really highlighted for me. I don't know about you, Denise, but I get to get more and more bleeding highlights as we go through this chapter because there's a lot of really good stuff in it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the book this chapter starts out by talking about things that you decide you want based on things that you know you do not want. And so it's kind of that contrast of, well, if something is happening to, in, through, or around you that you don't want, what can you do to create better habits that lead you to something that you do want? It starts out by talking about a story where people were really suffering with some health hazards and suffering so much so that people were dying and people were very, very ill. And the simple habit of washing their hands, we went through this with COVID a couple of years ago even, right? They made a big deal about wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. How gross to think that people were not already making that a habit. But in this story, soap wasn't easily available. So when you go back to what you were just saying, Sam, about the four laws, well, it was obvious that the people were sick and they were living in filthy environments. To make something attractive, well, they needed something that would make it healthier. And so they needed access to soap. And so they needed to make it easy to get this soap. And so they actually partnered up with Procter & Gamble, who makes the soap Safeguard, to be able to get bar soap. So not liquid soap, but bar soap, because then that was the third law of making it easy, make it accessible, make it something that everyone had access to. And then the satisfying part I thought was interesting in this chapter, and curious on your thoughts as well. It wasn't so much that washing their hands was this satisfying feeling. Like I remember years ago, there used to be this shampoo commercial for herbal essence. And I don't know why, and I told the story, I think, in another episode long ago, but this lady was washing her hair on the beach. Okay, well, I have no idea why she was washing her hair on the beach. There was no water there other than the ocean, and that was dirty, but she was having this super satisfying experience of washing her hair. And you could see all these luxurious soap bubbles, and she was talking about how great it felt on her hair, and that she was going to tell her friends, and then they were going to tell their friends, and then they were going to tell their friends. And in the picture on the scene, every time she said, and they'll tell their friends, like the screen got more and more people washing their hair on the beach. And it was a satisfying experience to think about this environment that was so beautiful, combined with this experience of washing your hair. Well, in this story, in the book, this was not a satisfying experience. People were dying. But what they needed, which was the behavior change to make something satisfying, was that by using the soap, they found that there was a rapid shift in their health of their children, so much so that things like diarrhea fell by over 50%, pneumonia fell by almost 50%, and bacterial skin infections were cleared up by over 35%, all by doing something that was satisfying, simple, easy, and available, which was this bar of soap. So curious what you got out of that story or thoughts.
And what they did here, right, in this kind of opening story is the same thing that Herbal Essence did, is that they made the experience of washing your hands, of washing your hair, really pleasurable by all of the sensory engagement. So what was different about the soap, it's not that they didn't have soap in this environment, it's that people were really haphazard in washing with the soap that they had. So they brought in this quote unquote premium soap that made a lot of bubbles, and it smelled really, really great. So people liked it. It was like, oh, this is pleasurable to do this. It feels good. It's got all these fun bubbles. It's, smells really great. And that satisfaction of doing it, right? Same thing with Herbal Essence. That, I don't know if anybody's ever used it, but like that, I used to use it in the 90s, smelled so good. I thought I was so fancy, using this shampoo and conditioner and stuff. I can still smell it actually. It's a core memory in my head because it was such a satisfying smell that it makes you want to use it again, right? I was a loyal Herbal Essence user for a long time because of that smell, right? You think about people who stick with brand loyalty and perfumes that they use, or I think about all of the Bath and Body Works soaps that they have, the ones that foam, you push it, it's instantly foam in my hand. I love that. It'll be seasonally smelling great. It looks pretty. So everything about it, I was like, oh, my bathroom is so fancy because I'm using this fancy soap, right? And so it increases, hand washing. You do it with kids who are trying to build that habit of hand washing. Is I get my son soap that he likes and he washes his hands. When he doesn't, he's not into it as much.
I love your example of Bath and Body Works because they trick you. So every month I get these postcards, and they'll say on the postcard, here's an offer for a free product up to $9.95 value. And there's another coupon that says, and here's 20% off the entire rest of your purchase. Then you walk in the door, and the very first thing you see is, if you buy 5 for $25 or buy 2 for $25 each or something, they entice you to want more than you need. And it is satisfying to walk in. You smell all the candles and you see the way that things are. So this is how the best brands are selling the most products. But I think there's a curious thing here that I think will resonate with you based on something you taught us a few episodes ago. One of the things that James says is that the person that was involved in this crisis with the hand soap said, it's a lot easier for people to adopt a product that provides a strong positive sensory signal, sort of like what you were just saying with either Bath and Body Works or Herbal Essence shampoo. For example, the mint taste of toothpaste. I just was at the dentist recently, and that's the first thing that my hygienist asked me, do you want mint or bubble gum? So there's something about that sensory. And so, but then he goes on to say, it's a lot easier to adopt the product with the sensory than it is to adopt a habit that does not provide pleasurable sensory feedback like flossing one's teeth. So when I read that, I instantly wrote in the margin, Sam likes to floss her teeth. So I'm curious for you, what was it about you getting back into the habit of flossing your teeth that did give you either a sensory feedback habit or gave you a positive sense that it was something about the brand? Like, what was it that made you go back to that?
It was two things, and they're both in this cardinal rule of behavior change, which is what is rewarded is repeated, what is punished is avoided. And what James says is we're looking for immediate satisfaction. The two things that give me immediate satisfaction with flossing my teeth every single night before I go to bed is, one, I get this mouth feel of like being able to suck air in between my teeth. And I actually do that. So like I'm done flossing. I'm like, oh, this is great. like it feels really good. So it's immediately satisfying. And then the other thing that I get to do is I'm tracking this in a habit tracker. So I get to check off, and I have this very satisfying, very long string of, habits that I've done, right? I'm at day 53. 53
Wow.
days in a row. Right? So to me, I'm like, yes, I flossed my teeth. I checked it off 53 times. That feels good because I'm a list person. I'm a checkbox person. That feels so good to me. And I know that about myself. So I put it on my list, and it's like, yeah, I did it. It's amazing, to check it off, and it's doing it. So I've coupled these two immediate satisfaction feelings with this behavior that I wanted to have. So it's that kind of stuff. That's really what we're talking about here in this, this cardinal rule of behavior change, is that if you want something to be repeated, you've got to make it super, super satisfying. And this fourth law is really about closing the habit loop to make you want to do it next time, right? Yeah. So it's like, yes, I love it now, but I love it now, and therefore I want to do it again.
Yeah. Well, if we stay on the same topic of toothpaste and the dentist, I suppose. I recently went to the dentist, and I love going to the dentist. It's sort of relaxing, but I think it's only because I've never had a cavity. And so I find it very satisfying and rewarding to go to the dentist because I know that the dentist is going to come in, and this might seem silly, but he'll come in and he'll be like, Denise, teeth look great. They're amazing. Good job. Good job.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Yeah, I brushed my teeth and I floss. But he always says that to me. Teeth look great. Good job. See you in 6 months. And then I pay him a lot of money for him to tell me it again 6 months later. But I recently got a new toothbrush, and this new toothbrush is super soft. And I've never been one for really soft bristles, but this new toothbrush is super soft and is really wide. And what I noticed in the last maybe month or so of using the new toothbrush is that there is this obviously the cue when you wake up in the morning is you want to brush your teeth. But if you're using a hard toothbrush, it doesn't really feel satisfying or attractive to be able to do that. But this new toothbrush I have feels so good. It's like massaging my teeth. It's soft on my cheeks and my gums. It makes my whole mouth feel clean. I don't know if you've ever had some toothpaste where after you brush your teeth and you just feel still my mouth just still doesn't feel clean. But then there's other toothpaste brands. I use Sensodyne, which is what's talked about in the chapter 2. It makes my mouth feel clean. And so this new toothbrush I have has given me that response. And what I've noticed is that even though I always brush my teeth after I eat something, I have found myself wanting to brush my teeth because the feeling that I get when I use this is probably like that feeling you get when you can feel the air between your teeth. And so one of the things that James talks about is he said, what's rewarded is repeated. So again, for me, I take good care of my teeth because my dentist says good job. but also it says that what is punished is avoided. So how many things do we do that we avoid? And I think about this from terms of work, maybe. Have you ever had where a manager has said, just briefly in an email, a text, or something that just says, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And the question would be, do you immediately feel like, oh, I'm so excited they have time for me to talk to me for a minute? Or do you feel like, oh God, what did I do? Am I in trouble?
Yeah. And it's that thing that you've got to really understand. And for everybody, you have to realize what works for you isn't going to work for everybody, right? Like I'm thinking about your toothbrush story and how you're talking about like, oh, you like the really soft bristles. Some people are the exact opposite, is why they make all the different varieties. And if you don't even know they make all the different varieties, like, there's something to like go figure out. Do you like that firm feeling? Like some people really like that scrubbing hard feeling. That is the satisfaction for them. Whereas other people like super soft, like, oh, this is just a nice, like gentle wiping of my teeth, like lovely, yes. Right? Like, and so that's the key, is that you've got to understand what works for you and what doesn't. And what's really interesting is James gets into like the neuroscience behind it. And what he says is, compared to the age of the brain, modern society is brand new. And so what you've got to understand is that your brain, my brain, all of our brains are wired for instant satisfaction. We are still at our core hunters and gatherers who are looking to just survive in the world, right? So catching that prey and eating the berries that you found are instantly satisfied, right? Like I get the thing that I need and I want. And this is what marketing, modern day marketing, uses, not against us, but uses in favor of themselves for selling the products that they've got. So you've got to have this consciousness and this knowledge that you at your core are going for instant gratification. It's why social media is so big. It's that dopamine hit. It's that, yes, I love this. This is great. Oh my gosh, I feel good after I win this level on my game on my phone that I've been playing for 4 hours that I don't want to play. But it's because your brain is looking for this instant satisfaction, which is like a super interesting concept. And you're really into like the neuroscience behind everything. So I don't know. What did you think about that, Denise, when we went through this part?
I used a highlighter on almost this whole section of the book because of that. And I think that you're right. Like that's satisfying to me to learn how my brain works and how other brains work. And so an area that I highlighted that I found super fascinating goes based on what you just said about instant gratification and this kind of TikTok generation. It says behavioral economists, refer to this tendency as time inconsistency. That is, the way your brain evaluates rewards is inconsistent across time. You value the present more than the future, and time consistency in the margins is something called hyperbolic discounting. But the way that James describes it is, he says, usually this tendency serves us well. A reward that is certain, not possible, but certain right now, is typically worth more than one is merely possible in the future. But occasionally our bias towards instant gratification causes problems. It kind of makes me think of an example right now. So my son, Vincent, has recently decided that his instant gratification or his certainty is that he wants to have money while he's at college. And so he's decided that he wants to get a job. Now, when I was in college, I worked, but only in the summertime because I used college to focus on school. But he has decided that he wants to try to go to school, play soccer, be in the pep band, be on the volleyball team, intramurals, have fun with his friends, and have this job. And one of the things that he said to me the other day, because it's exciting, right? He just started his job. Like if you all think about when you first started your job, wherever you work, you were probably also really excited that day. But I wonder if things change over time when that instant certainty isn't really thinking about what's going to happen in the future. Will you become busier? Will you become bored? Will you become disenchanted? Will you get a bad manager? Will you find that thing that you're good at, you don't enjoy doing anymore? And so this is where we're seeing in the world of things that moved from great resignations to silent quitting. that only changed because the economy changed. I think if the economy was still open and a lot of jobs were available, you'd still see a lot of people quitting and going to other things, because something about that instant satisfaction is no longer. We were talking off the mic before the show started about how there's some people that are not saving for the future because it's easier to just want all your money now so that you can have that instant gratification to buy things today, but not planning for the future because the future seems so elusive and far away.
Yeah, and James has one of the things I highlighted here is the more immediate pleasure you get from an action, the more strongly you should question whether it aligns to your long-term goals. And so knowing that we are going, like our brains are seeking this immediate satisfaction. Right now, I want the things that I want. What you really have to focus on, and when you're designing your life, right? This is really about you making small changes to get to the life that you really want. You have to think about, okay, what actions right now can give me pleasure that are aligned to who I want to be, right? So like you've got to go back to what's the identity I'm trying to build, not that necessarily the actions, right? And really getting aligned to, okay, I want to be someone who is active. Well, what can I do right now that is going to move me in the right direction? And so you've got to find the right rewards, the right things that you're chasing in the moment that align to that. So where, a lot of people we see this all the time, right? It's like, oh, I ate really healthy all day because I'm trying to be somebody who like takes care of my body and doing all this stuff. So I'm going to reward myself with ice cream. But that is incongruent with the person that you want to like, right? What you're going for. So what you have to find is the rewards have to be in line with, in congruence with the identity that you're trying to build, right? Like my husband and I had this chat the other day. My son was at his football game. He he really put in a lot of effort, really tried really hard, right? Like did all the things you want to see in like a young budding, athlete and, all the movements and stuff and things like that. And so my husband was like, oh, let's get him some McDonald's, right? Like that'll be a good reward for this. And I was like, McDonald's is not a good reward for, all the effort and things in sports. Like I agree with you. Like he did a great job. You could see him trying. He was the one who was running in and off the sidelines. Like that's what you want to see, right? We want to see that level of effort and all the really good attitude they had. So then it was like, okay, what can we reward him with that is congruent with attitude and effort, which are the big things we're trying to stress with him at, the developmental phase he's at. And
isn't it funny that you're saying like who thinks of a reward as a banana or as an apple,
Right. And it's not, and that's not going to work, right? Unless you just love bananas. Right. But like you have to find the thing that's in line with what you're trying to do that you actually do like. You cannot reward yourself with I hate bananas. I don't like the taste of them. I can't reward myself with a banana. That would be terrible. But I could reward myself with a healthy snack that is incongruent with it, right? Like does match what I want to do. Or, if I'm working out, I can find something like, then I get to buy myself new fancy yoga pants because I love that. Like, I get to, right? Like after 10 workouts, I get to buy myself the expensive yoga pants. Like, yeah, go girl, you get it. Like it's that kind of a thought process. What's, making sure that all that stuff aligns, but like, don't make that your goal if you're trying to be really financially stable. That's not going to help you. Like, you've got to look at the big picture of who am I trying to be and what rewards align with all that.
Man, that's so good, because I think that a lot of people do what you just said, is they'll go exercise really hard and then reward themselves with something that actually is poisoning the result. Candy is a perfect example. If we know, for example, that cigarettes kill you. There is no research that says that nicotine is good for your body. People still smoke because they have an instant gratifying sensory feeling of what happens when they're smoking, even though they know it's killing them. Well, that seems drastic, but sugar does the same thing. There is so much research out there about how sugar breeds cancer and that sugar promotes unhealthy weight, unhealthy living. It doesn't help our brain have the proper signals to form strong habits and behaviors and thought patterns. It tears it apart. And yet, often a reward is, let's go to Dairy Queen, let's eat a piece of candy, let's do something that is poisoning you. In fact, in the book, James says our preference for instant gratification reveals an important truth about success. Because of how we are wired, most people will spend all day chasing quick hits of satisfaction. I was on the phone this morning with somebody, and the person was saying, hey, can you just give me a minute? I need to go grab a cup of coffee. So the person came back to the phone, and I said to her, oh, I'm curious, what kind of coffee do you like? Because I like coffee and I like brewing coffee. And part of my satisfaction comes from the way I brew coffee. And she said, oh, no, I hate coffee. She said, I'm having a shot of espresso. I down it really fast, and then I drink a glass of water right afterwards because I hate the taste. But that instant gratification I need is how I feel when that caffeine jolts through my blood system. I'm like, maybe you should try green tea. I'm not sure, but it was so strange to hear her discussing that she had to have this habit of espresso before she starts work, but it was the result she gets from it, not the satisfaction from what the thing was. But James goes on to say, to end up the sentence or the paragraph, he says, the road less traveled is the road of delayed gratification. If you are willing to wait for the rewards, you will face less competition and often get a bigger payoff. As the saying goes, the last mile is always the least crowded. I think that this is the lesson we've both learned from John Maxwell as well. And I have an article. So Scott, if you can put into the show notes my Forbes article on the article about making choices in the road less traveled. This is based off that Robert Frost poem where the guy is standing at a crossroads and he has to make a decision. Do I go left? Do I go right? But what the poem doesn't say is that it's also a decision to do nothing. And it's also a decision to turn his body around and go back from where he came from. But the poem proposes that he has to move forward, but he doesn't know what it's going to be. On the left-hand side, the poem basically talks about how the left-hand side is clear, like he can see the road. There's other people traveling on it. The road is popular, but he chooses to go on the road or the path less traveled. Well, that can be scary sometimes, right? Because the less traveled pathway means that less people have gone there. Why? Is it scary? Is it dangerous? Is it not the successful way to go? But if you get stuck on questioning, well, what if it's this or what if it's that? And what if I go that way and it doesn't work out? Then you're missing out on things like, what if it's the best way to go because it's the least crowded, it's the fastest route, maybe it's the best scenery. All of this applies to your career journey as well. If you take the road most crowded, or you do nothing if you are stuck in a job you don't like or with people that don't resonate with your style, then you're stuck there, but you have a choice. And it's the same with this book. Is the cardinal rule of behavior change is that the last word change means you have to do something different with your behaviors to get a different result.
And you have to know that you're going for that satisfaction, right? Your body is wired for it. You can't fight it. It is what it is, right? And if you're anywhere on like a neurodivergent spectrum, right? You've got ADHD, you've got OCD, you've got whatever, then you also have to know that your brain is wired maybe a little bit different than the typical setup that James is talking about, right? Like ADHD, like you're chasing those dopamine hits like even more actively, right? Those typical levels are a little bit different. So you've got to really know, okay, like, right, this is where going back and assessing what I do in a day and a week, like what were the decisions I made? What were the things that were super satisfying? Why did I go from this thing to this thing to this thing to this thing? Like what was I chasing in all of that? And, and really taking that step back to take a bird's eye view of what you're doing so that I tend to go towards this type of pleasure, this type of thing. I avoid this type of pain, right? In general, I can see that in my behavior in the last week, the last month, whatever. And so how do I, that's where you get into like the life hacks, right? How do I use that knowledge to my advantage? How do I look at myself and go figure out, all right, I chase the things this is my gum, my big league chew gum habit, right? Like what I was really chasing in reaching for candy or chips or snacks was that satisfying jaw movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, now I'm just going to pick up gum, and it's within arm's reach. I can turn around right now and grab a piece of gum when I get that feeling. And again, like it's very little calories. My dental reports are coming back good. I can still chew it, not very much, right? It goes for sugar-free if you're cavity prone, but like, right. It's understanding how you work and utilizing that to your advantage to find these rewards that keep you on the path to the identity you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. So if we wrap this up, we're basically talking about what's your motivation, what actually satisfies you, what's your inspiration, what are the things that move you toward the direction you want to go in, and who are you at your truest core. And the great news is, if you are like me, or many others listening to this, that you are kind of on this spectrum of having these quick dopamine hits because maybe you do have either some sort of neurodivergence or attention deficit of some sort. Next week, we're going to talk about how to stick with good habits every day so that it doesn't feel like a burden and it doesn't feel like something you don't want to do, but so that it's enjoyable and so that it lasts and so that it moves you in the direction that you want to go in. So this has been a great time together talking about the first part of this law number 4 of making things satisfying, the cardinal rule of behavior change. Next time, we're going to stick with good habits every day. Sam, it was amazing as always to be with you here today. And friends, thank you for joining in. This has been another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.